Okay, chapter 7, negotiating intersections. It's probably the most important chapter in the book. So this is good stuff here. Watch out for dangerous intersections. Intersections are places where roadways meet or cross. An intersection is one of the most complex situations that drivers encounter. The chances of a collision are greater at intersections more than at any other point on the roadway. Intersections are dangerous because many drivers cross paths there and many unexpected stops occur in intersections. You can see the picture of the two cars colliding there, which is a typical scene, right? Anywhere, even when we're out driving around, we will see those types of collisions. That's what we want to avoid. More than 1/3 of all collisions occur at intersections. More than 1/4 of all fatal collisions occur at intersections. One reason for the large number of collisions at intersections is the driver's failure to identify a safe path of travel through the intersection. 4 clues: there's an intersection ahead, street signs and lights, roadway markings, pedestrians, turning or stopping traffic. Intersections can be found in various designs. After identifying an intersection, you'll need to determine if you have an open zone for your intended path of travel and through the intersection. A line of sight restriction at intersection can be caused by the environment or by other highway users. If your path of travel is clear, continue searching left front and right front zones for a path of travel change or a line of sight of restriction. Once you pass the point of no return, you should continue through the intersection. The point of no return is the point which a driver can no longer stop safely without entering the intersections. You're not allowed to make lane changes within an intersection. 100 feet before, during the middle of, or after a law. Why? Because that's how collisions occur. You may have to stop an intersection when you identify or predict a closed zone or a line of sight restriction ahead. A safety stop is when your front bumper is even with the curb line or cars parked on the cross street, allowing you to search 90 degrees to the right and left. When turning, your last check should be in the direction of your intended path of travel. Determine the right-of-way and judging gaps. The term right-of-way describes the privilege of having immediate use of the road, certain part of the roadway. You have the right-of-way only when other drivers give it to you. It's not something that you can take. And a gap is the distance between vehicles. When you enter through a through street after stopping, you must judge the size of the gaps in traffic. Turning right and accelerating at 30 miles an hour takes about 6 seconds. Turning left and accelerating to 30 miles an hour takes about 7 seconds. Turning left or right into lanes of other vehicles called joining traffic. So some different situations where to yield at. So top left, yield at uncontrolled intersections to pedestrians enter near the crosswalk. Any vehicle that has entered the intersection, a vehicle from the right if you both arrive at the same time. And top right, yield to emergency vehicles, sounding a siren or using a flashing light. Bottom left, yield at all yield signs. So yield signs, you yield. And then bottom right, yield at four-way stops to all pedestrians in the crosswalks, vehicles that arrive first. And in this situation, right, if with these two cars here, if you both arrive at the same time, the car on the right, immediate right, would get to go first. And that would be the white car. All right, yield coming from an alley, driveway, or private roadway. So typically on an alley, a lot of times you have to make 2 stops. One stop before the, I would say the street, and or the sidewalk, and then another stop when you can actually have a line of sight where you can see past the line of sight. So you might have to make 2 stops. Crossing an intersection takes 4 to 5 seconds from a stop. Turning left is more dangerous and takes longer, and therefore you should have a greater gap when turning. At 55 miles an hour, you need a gap of more than 3 1/2 blocks when turning into traffic. So yeah, you're sitting at the stop sign. I always recommend look both directions, at least, you know, at least twice, sometimes third time. So I'm gonna look left, look right, look left, look right. If it's a really busy intersection, I might have to look one more time. But this is not the time to, you know, like guess if you can go, right? There's no guessing. You have to know for sure. So if you can't see beyond the stop sign, like if cars are coming, you have to pull up a little bit. The faster cars are moving, you need a larger gap. So if you're, you know, if you're in a 25 mile an hour, you can join traffic and get up to the traffic flow a lot easier. But if you're pulling onto the highway and cars are coming 55 miles an hour, you need a large gap because you don't want them running into the back of you. Controlled intersections is one at which traffic signals or signs determine the right of way. Obeying signs and traffic signals when you approach a controlled intersection. 2 kinds of signs controlled intersections: stop sign, yield sign. So stop sign, you come to a complete stop. You have to come to a complete stop. Don't roll through the stop sign because you will be ticketed. Yield sign, you don't have to make a complete stop, but you have to make sure you slow down. Sorry about the dog. At a stop sign, stop line. I'm moving to the other room, you guys. Sorry about this. I'll move into the other room here. Okay. All right, that's better. At a stop sign, stop line, or crosswalk, you must come to a full stop. At a yield sign, slow and yield the right of way to vehicles on the through street. Stale green light is a light that has been green for some time. You're going to predict that the light's going to turn yellow. By talking to yourself this way, you'll be ready to make the right decision if the light turns yellow. So if the light's been green for some time, you know, take your foot off the accelerator, cover the brake, and be prepared to stop. Fresh green light is a light that has just turned green. You must always check for vehicles that ran the red light and the pedestrians. And a yellow light, when you approach an intersection, as the light turns yellow, you must decide whether to stop or to proceed. If the light turns yellow before the point of no return, go ahead and come to a stop. But if you're already out there, right, and you know, then that's when you just continue going if you're past the line of no return. If you have a vehicle in front of you at a red light, where should you stop? You should stop back far enough where you can see its rear wheels touching the roadway. Protected and unprotected left turn. An unprotected left turn is made at a signal controlled intersection that does not have a special left turn light, no arrow. So you look on the right-hand side, that's a green circle when you're taking a left. That's an unprotected left turn if you're taking a left. You have to yield to oncoming traffic because the other side, you know, is going to have a green light as well. So you cannot go. It's important to know the difference between an unprotected green light, taking a left, and a protected. So this picture on the left turn signal, the bottom left, this is a protected turn. This means the other side has a red light. So if you see this arrow, you can make a protected left turn when a special left turn light lets you turn while oncoming traffic is stopped. Okay. Now I will say that some, in Iowa, some of the lights that are unprotected are going from the green circle to like the flashing yellow. So flashing yellow in a green circle would mean you would have to yield. Okay, so When you're turning left at an intersection, yield to all oncoming vehicles until you have all the time and space. Okay, the green arrow, it comes at all times and comes with all colors of lights, red, yellow, green. A delayed green light indicates that one side of the intersection has a green light, while the light for the oncoming traffic remains red. Right on red, it is legal to turn right on red when you do not see any signs. What are some signs you will see? Always yield to pedestrians and oncoming traffic before turning right on red and complete your turn in the nearest lane. So you pull up to the stoplight, come to a complete stop, and then check to, if there's a sign. If there's no sign, if it doesn't say no right turn on red, then you can do a right turn on red, but you can only do it if it's done safely. So you have to look to your left, look for turning traffic straight ahead before you go. Some states let you do a left turn on red if it's a turn from a one-way street to another one-way street. I don't think we have any of those in Iowa here, so that doesn't apply. Uncontrolled intersections. An uncontrolled intersection has no signs or signals to regulate traffic. These intersections usually are found in areas of light traffic, such as residential areas. When there is another vehicle approaching an uncontrolled intersection, you should slow down and assume that the other driver does not see you. A lot of residential areas have packed cars, bushes, trees, and fences, and these create a line of sight restriction. At an uncontrolled intersection, if both drivers hit the intersection at the same time, the driver on the left yields to the driver on the right. Railroad crossing. In cities and towns, a railroad sign is indicating a railroad is about 250 feet from the crossing. In rural areas, it's about 750 feet. Next to it is a white crossbuck. A controlled railroad crossing, also called active railroad crossing, usually has red lights along with crossing gates. Remain stopped until the lights stop flashing and the gates have raised. It is illegal, unsafe, and costly to drive around the gates, so do not do that. An uncontrolled railroad crossing or passive crossing does not have flashing red lights or crossing gates. Railroad tracks have two different signs. Also, a white crossbuck lets you know of railroad tracks. Treat these the same as an intersection with a yield sign. Yellow school buses stop at all railroad crossings. Just this last year in the spring, there were 4 ladies somewhere down in West Burlington area that lived on a gravel road next to railroad tracks. I'm not sure how exactly it happened, but they were going shopping and they pulled out and they were killed in a very rural area that didn't have the gates or the flashing lights. So rural areas, you really have to pay attention. These were 4 grown women, adult, just in the last year that this happened. Very unfortunate and sad. Okay, roundabouts. It's a picture of a roundabout. I don't know, in a Tumblr or any place we're gonna see those big of ones, but in general, you should know how they work. Roundabouts are traffic signals that do not contain signals. Roundabouts are safer and more efficient than traffic signals. In traffic roundabouts, all traffic is moving in the same direction, so there is not head-on collisions. Be aware of pedestrians at roundabouts. Good rules is, if necessary, stop before entering, select a safe gap and turn right to enter. Once you're in the circle, you have the right of way. In multiple lanes, get in the correct lane early. Do not pass or do not change lanes except to merge. Signal prior to your exit. Never stop in a roundabout. When exiting from an inside lane, check the lane next to you and check your blind spot to be sure the outside lane is clear. Remember, when I'm approaching the roundabout, yield to cars coming from the left and then go right. That's all, folks.